Hey everyone, welcome to the very first of our Twitter Spaces. I'm just going to do a quick mic check because this is the very first time that I've used this Twitter Space feature. So Alejandro was my fellow co-host. Can you hear me? Can I hear you?
Ah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? No, you cannot hear me, right?
I can hear you
Yeah?
perfectly fine. Okay,
Okay.
great. We've we've got into Twitter. We've worked it out. Yeah, I appreciate there may be a little bit of a technical um, getting used to this Twitter Space things is certainly something we're going to try and learn during the exercise. So apologies that this might not run smoothly as some Twitter Spaces you may have heard, simply because we are doing it for the first time and I didn't do a practice run. So the way that it works, I believe, is that you should, as a listener, have a button somewhere that says request to talk, and I should be able to see those request to talks when they come in. So if we're discussing anything at all, and you want to add your 2 cents to that topic, then please do just press the request to talk button, which should be somewhere on your app. I will DM someone to verify that that does actually exist. In the meantime, it will just be me and Alejandro sort of ranting about various topics within AI, data science, and esports. So it would be nice to have a break from our voices and have someone else come in, especially if they have maybe a steelman opinion, something very controversial and different. That certainly makes it more exciting. So I'm just gonna was that you, Alejandro?
Yeah, it's me playing with
Were
the
you changing the
spaces.
mic? Ah, was is there actually was that a clap
Yeah,
button?
yeah,
It just
yeah.
sounded like
Yes, exactly,
static.
exactly.
Fantastic. All right, good stuff. So I've got a list of topics within this kind of wider space that I want to talk about throughout the evening. So just to give you an idea of the sort of things we want to discuss, one of them is yeah, I mean you could call it the boring side, which is the data and cleanliness side. You know, where does it all come from? How do you actually build models in esports, and how is that different to traditional sports? And what are the pros and cons? Then I wanted to get into kind of the more exciting stuff like AI specifically. What is AI? How can it be used? How has it been used? How has it been used in traditional sports? I want to go through a prioritization exercise, which I've done personally around about what is the biggest thing that AI and data can solve, and we will go through those topics later, specifically about League of Legends and esports. And then some other stuff around about, like best practices when it comes to AI and data and common issues that I see when I speak to wannabe analysts who are trying to break into the space, and sort of common issues in the way that they sort of present data and get results, etc. So again, if you are just hitting in, there should be a button somewhere on your app that says request to speak. So if you have anything to add, then just please hit that, and I hopefully will be able to see it and bring you into the debate. Alejandro, is there anything you want to add before we get into the first topic?
Well, actually, I just discovered that you can transform your. This is so fucking fun.
You were oh, you okay. There was a little bit of a lag after you pressed the button, so I think you're just sticking around with the voice changer
Like,
feature. Is that
how
right?
do you hear me right now?
It sounds like you're in a speaker hall.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's like a lot very echoey.
Ah, wherever. Okay.
Good fun though. Cool. So
I love this.
you're just going to be like the co-host who interrupts my flow by playing annoying set
Let's just
radio
make it
effects.
fun. This is not serious. This is
Yeah,
Twitter
make it
space.
fun.
Let's make it
It's,
fun.
it's a Saturday night, right? Cool. So we're going to get into the first topic, which is data, and how does data differ when it comes to esports and gaming versus traditional sports, and kind of like the pros and the cons of both sides of things. So I think it's important to remember that number one, Riot as a publisher are actually one of the best providers of data. So they give you a huge amount of raw data. Now, there is a question around about how well they do that, since a lot of the time they do it through the Base platform, which has its pros and cons, the biggest con being the fact that it costs a huge amount of money. And it's primarily built for betting companies, which is great for them, but makes it pretty much unaffordable for the everyday person. So I remember when, about 2 years ago, I was experimenting with the idea of breaking into esports and providing models and data and using AI for teams. And the first issue I ran into was FaZe wouldn't talk to me because I couldn't give them any money. So that is probably a common issue. I know that they are experimenting with giving free access for people who are developing tools, but at the moment it's been pretty inaccessible. But in general, Riot are very good, so you can get lots of data about solo queue data, for instance, and scrim data is now becoming available. So it's great, and you can get it in pretty good detail, as in you can get minutely data, and you get kills, all the kills, deaths, positions, warding, all those sort of things that you would expect from the Riot API, and it's really good of them to offer that for free. So we are at a big advantage, and you've got to remember that you've got to compare that to traditional sports where they're starting with a camera, right? Like that's the first source of data, is recording a football game. And then someone either has to transcribe the data, as in like write on a piece of paper saying kick the ball, pass the ball, scored a goal, or whatever, or they have to do some more expensive video AI where they're translating a video into raw data. And that is incredibly difficult and expensive to do. So we do have a massive advantage in the sense that our data just comes straight from the system itself, and that means it's clean and there's no human error in it. And it means that we can kind of do things for free. A lot of the tools that I originally built were just free tools using the Riot API. Alejandro, apart from random noises, do you have any opinions to
Yes.
the
Yes,
data side of things?
Yes, don't worry. So basically, everything that you said, like I totally agree with. Maybe I just want to point that at the same time we need to understand that Valles is right now the only provider that we have that can bring us, I would say, like real data. Because if we talk about data from solo queue, it's not like the best to work with, right? Because I guess that all of the analysts that are here could agree with that. The data from solo queue can be used for the first 15-20 minutes, most likely, because most of the high elo games are done by minute 10 or 7. So because of that, the only main source of data that we have is bias, and it's the most accurate one that we can have from different leaks. So something that we need to understand also is that bias is not a big company. It's not a big company, and it's not Riot. Like they work by their own, right? And I remember at the beginning, like 1 year ago, when you remember when we were in Excel, we were actually talking with Bias, and we were almost talking with the head of the development team. Like they were a team of how many? 10 people maximum. So it's like something that is building slowly, and I believe that at some point everyone will have access to it, and we could be doing many great things as a community overall. For example, comparing with the Formula One, this is something that you said before, and I think Agi also mentioned in your interview. In the Formula One, it's much more expensive at here because you need to build all of the devices in order to collect data from the car, right? But here, we just have it because it's League of Legends is an esports. Like in esports in general, you are playing on a server, so it's much easier to collect the data directly from the game. And something that you mentioned too is that bias does not give you access if you don't give them money. But at the same time, I remember a few days ago, I talked with them. They are actually quite open. If some of you want to talk with bias, if you are doing something for the customer, if you are creating any app from the customer, they're actually quite open to talk in case that you want to build something for the final customer, not the team itself.
Yeah, I mean I guess they do have a big incentive to increase the general ecosystem, right? Like they want more stuff to be made and proof of concepts to be built, because it just promotes more people to want to build these sort of things, and therefore there may be future chances to them to then sell the data to someone else, right? So I think it's good that they're looking at it. It is a controversial topic because should one company have a monopoly over the data is a big question, especially given it may restrict certain things from happening or kind of cost competition, which then drives down the cost. Because there's only one person who has, or one company that has access to it. But I think they do a great job anyway, and the data is genuinely quite good, especially now they've added scrim data, which was missing for quite a long time.
By the way, I have a question. I have a question here for the people who use Bias here. Do you also have a problem with the runes using Bias?
Well, I don't use it. I don't use it anymore. So if there is anyone in the chat who's
someone who puts requests.
Again, there should be a button on your screen that says, request to speak, and I can hopefully add you in. I will get someone to do a test run in a couple of minutes just to make sure it does work, because this is our first time using the Twitter Spaces. Yes, Biora, welcome. Let's see if it works.
What problem are you having?
The problem, for example, that I have is there are multiple games actually, especially from screens, that I'm not able to collect the runes from the game.
I mean, I'm not an engineer. I didn't set up our pipeline, but I haven't had problems. So I think that maybe it's just a pipeline issue. You got to go back to your wherever you're parsing the data and see.
And since you're on mute, tell us, how is your experience using the Bias, if you have experience with it?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
I mean, it's been okay. I mean, they're a small company, so a lot of the problems I have are related around, like, communication and feedback time, which, like, what are you going to do? Like, there's not, there's only so much they can do. But, I mean, it's significantly better than anything that you can get outside of, I guess now it's extended down to what, amateur level, or not yet? It's only an academy level, or?
Academy is, I think, maybe second divisions.
Yeah,
but I'm not 100% sure.
T2 division.
So, actually, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, they have it for T2. Anyone that plays on TR basically should be able to access, I assume, as long as they have an account. But yeah, it's much better than anything you can get outside of that range of play. So it's been nice, and there's more than enough to play around with to get an advantage over those who don't have it. So.
Yeah, for sure. I think this even opens up a wider conversation around about the ability to sell these sort of tools to a mass amount of teams. It's certainly something that if you know my route into esports, this is an issue that I had where I tried building a tool that would be that you could sell to multiple teams, but then found out there wasn't enough teams to sell to, and I think that could have been a problem with that FaZe had as well in the beginning, where they had this really complex infrastructure to get this raw data from Riot, but then they only had 20 teams that are willing to pay them to use it, right? So a lot of it can be from the growth of the ecosystem in general. So esports growing in general will mean that there are more teams.
If you're also building a private tool, like, teams aren't going to buy it. Like, a lot of teams don't trust outside sources for data, especially people who are higher up who don't know very much. Like, they're not going to trust you to sell them a tool that you're also selling to their competitors, which obviously makes sense. So it's kind of like a shit market in that respect. Like, you don't have like a good, like, even if there was a lot of teams, right? Even if you had more, like, the odds of them all, or the odds of like multiple teams buying your product, like, pretty low. So it has to be so valuable that even if one team buys it, you're making a return. that's what you care about, So I don't know. It's kind of a rough venture for sure. You're better off developing a tool that is useful for the public at like a sub fee or something like that.
Is this where I advertise the Itero drafting coach, or no, should I wait?
Wait. Hey, Logan. How are you, Logan?
Logan did message me saying he'd love to talk, but he is afraid on the move, so it's just
don't let him
a passive listener for now. I'm also aware that there is someone in the listeners who I won't call them out because I don't know if they want to speak or not, who is trying to do something like this, as in build a tool to sell to teams. And it is an issue that I see continuously with. It seems like such a great idea because you have a genuine advantage that you can offer a team. And from most people's experience, the best way to do that is to turn it into a tool, productize it, and then sell that to as many teams as possible until you find out, like Biora says, that no one trusts you. And most people are not willing to buy a tool that other people are also buying because they're worried about the competition. I certainly know when I was trying this, a lot of teams were keen to do it, subject to me signing a clause saying I won't sell to any other teams.
Yeah. And at that point, like, how are you going to make money? You can't. So it's pretty shit.
It also I think it's a League of Legends mentality though, because if you compare with Valorant, for example, most of them are using the same. How is it called? I don't know if there's someone from Valorant here who can say that.
Grid.
But there is one.
Grid, yeah. But the thing is, like, that's because Valorant is a lot more new. Like, all these league teams already have data teams. You know what I mean? So, like, a lot of the for Valorant, it's a little bit different because it's so new that teams are willing to sacrifice a little bit of privacy just to have something to use. But I think that it's just like as that scene grows, the same thing's going to happen. Like they're going to get their own teams of analysts who can just build these things themselves, and GG.
Yeah, but here's the thing: if we compare Valorant with CS:GO, for example, with Counter-Strike, they're using exactly the same things from Valorant, because it is true Valorant is a game that is new, etc. But at the end, they have the same background from Counter-Strike, and they have kind of similar knowledge. And if you go to the Counter-Strike scene, the definition of an analyst is much different than here. Like, for example, for shooters, an analyst is more like for us a strategic coach. That is why in Valorant and Counter-Strike they are more open-minded to have a tool that can provide them data in a clear way.
I think I have the wrong idea about it, because we have Soham, who like it's just set up the entire CS:GO pipeline similar to League. So like he just like that's my only knowledge of CS:GO. Like, this guy just
I know that because this is split I tried to apply for many Valorant teams, and then I realized that all of them are looking for a strategic coach.
Yeah.
That's not my thing. And that's what I want to say. Like, I think the extra value that they put in Valorant or Counter-Strike is this game knowledge that they have, and they just collect this data from this common tool that everyone just go and buy.
Yeah, it's a lot of people don't realize as well that FaZe originally did a tool like that as well. It's called Shadow GG, I believe, and I think a lot of teams did have it about 2 years ago. But eventually, like Biora says, they just started hiring their own analysts who were able to either reproduce what Shadow GG or whatever it was called offered.
Right, exactly.
Plus, they were able to do their own custom requests as well and say, this tool doesn't currently have jungle pathing, but I want jungle pathing, and I can't be bothered to go through a 3-month request cycle to ask for that feature in this product. I'm just going to hire an analyst who can do it in a couple of weeks.
Right. Yeah, that's how it'll go. It's kind of a losing game to go down that route, I think, for sure. Because I mean, you got to remember, all these teams have really savvy people working for them too. Like they'll just rip your shit like immediately. Like. Which, I mean, that's just how it is. Like, you can't make money off of selling to teams, I'm pretty sure. Like, I think you have to just... Like, even in Valorant and CSGO, like, yeah, teams are more open-minded, right? But once those teams develop a little more, like they're just going to start stealing. Like, I don't know how to explain what I'm saying, but like it's not a long lasting, or it's not like a healthy market for anyone. It's going to dry up very fast. So I think it's way better to just aim for some sort of public model.
Yeah, I agree. I know a couple of companies that have done it, but they've not done it through productionizing the analysis. They've done it through consulting fees, which you can get a lot higher fees because you've got it in person.
Right. You can do partnerships, but you need a whole team to do that. Like we're working with HPE, our partnership, and it's really good. It's those guys are really good, but that's a whole team of people. Like HPE is making like. It's not like they're just selling one product. They're selling like time, which is obviously always going to be valuable. But
yeah, exactly. And you can trust it more. It's easier. So let's say you were a coach for the LEC or LCS, and you were about to go into a game. Let's say it was a finals for the LEC or LCS. Are you going to trust the output of a model that's just kind of a lot of it's kind of a black box, you don't really understand how it's being calculated to make your decisions on draft versus actually having an analyst there explaining it to you? Like I just don't see a system in which a team would accept random a model's output just blindly on blind faith alone. That's not the same for solo queue, right? Like if you're a solo queue player, you probably will accept reading model outputs because there's not so much stake on the line and you don't have the knowledge to kind of contradict it. But as a coach, you probably consider yourself pretty knowledgeable in the area, so it's very easy for you to say this AI doesn't understand what I'm trying to do here and reject what it's proposing.
Yeah, I agree and disagree here at the same time, because I agree with what you say, that they don't really trust, and even probably most of us, we have experienced at any point during our career that we had conflict with coaches because they didn't really trust what we were doing. But I also want to say, like, it all depends of the people who is behind it. Because, for example, imagine, let's say, Google or Microsoft, imagine if they create a tool using bias. Do you think that teams will not trust what Microsoft is doing? Like, I think they will. It's just like, who is the person that is behind that product? That is what matters.
But my point is, like your example, right? Microsoft makes a product, right? Like, once my analysts or me in this situation sees that product, I no longer we don't need Microsoft anymore. So that's my point. Is like you can sell maybe one or two times, and try to get out with some money, but it's not a good market because people are just going to steal what you sell them eventually, and then or not, what I'm saying? But you understand what I'm saying? Like, I like, it's normally I'm of the opinion sharing is good. Like when you're starting out, sharing your work is good because other people can learn. But like when you're trying to make a business, like once you make that product for 100 Thieves or whoever, like Tim is just going to take your product and not only take it but make it better, and then they're not going to, like, why would they need you anymore? Like, you're not going to, it's not a sustainable market. And also, not only that, but then you're also running into the trust problems of teams who might not even give you a chance in the first place. So it's like, that's one barrier. Like, can I even get past the barrier of trust? Like, will teams even trust me to want to do it? And if you do, are they going to just look at what I give them, like reverse engineer it and iterate on it and then kick me to the curb? Yeah, probably. So it's just not like it's not a good avenue of like financial stability, if that makes sense.
I think it's not for the short term, right? Because at the end is what you said. Okay, I'm gonna hire this for like a few years. I will replicate that, but then during this time, like during the time that you are spending on replicating that, it's the time that someone else can use to improve what they have already. And going back to the example that I gave you, for example, who do you think that is gonna work faster and better, Microsoft team or Jack? at his house. We never know, but it should be Microsoft with an
Taking
entire team
insult
of
from
data. It's not, or maybe yes.
No, but that's different. That's a partnership. That's like, that is good. Like if you have a partnership, that's a great way to cement yourself. But you need a team. Like you guys would have to have an actual, like if Jack wants to do that, he has to have a team. Like no one's going to partner just with Jack, like because their analysts can just do what Jack can do, like maybe not better, but like they can just do what he can do. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's my point. You can do a partnership like we have with HPE, like C9 has with Microsoft, etc. But like, and that's a great way to, provide value to a team while also making a solid return. But other than that, like it's hard. Like just selling a product or trying to make a one-man sort of partnership is, I mean, you might as well just get employed, right? Like,
yeah.
We've just had a request to speak from Bok. Bok, it's timed out, so if you could just send it again, we'll add you in so you can add your 2 cents into this topic. Bok is the strategic and individual coach for Anubis Esports, so interesting to get your take on it when you've got a second. And anyone else who wants to contribute, just there is a button somewhere on your Twitter space that says request to speak, and I can approve it once I've worked out how. You're in, Buck.
Hello. So
Hey.
I'm strategic coach, but I'm also like a data scientist. I worked in firms before in Paris, and I think that the profitability problem with AI right now is a big question. So like the expertise that people can implement is the most important part. I think that if you offer like APIs or any sort of business model to make your project profitable, it will always depend on how much expertise you can get in the beginning to make the best performance. Like I know Microsoft works with Cloud9, for example, but maybe they're not the best at. I've seen a bit in their video, and I've heard a bit from Cloud9 managers and stuff. I think that the AI they're trying to implement, or the scoring system they're trying to implement, or even sort of recommendation or anything, lacks some expertise in League of Legends. So, like to create your advantage to penetrate this market, I think that some League of Legends expertise can help you to build a good API, and then you just try to sell API calls to the teams or to a scouting process or anything. So I think that business plans of AI right now are not really like you don't have one business plan that will work 100%, but I think that the performance of the tool will be like really determined, and really will determine how much you can sell and how many teams will be interested in your product as well.
Yeah. There's definitely that. I think Biora's main point is that's you can get these short-term gains, but there's no long-term business plan there, right? Like you can produce this if you put the time and effort in and got a team together. You could build this and sell it to free teams, but you can guarantee that within 2 years, those free teams are going to steal most of the stuff you're doing, reproduce it themselves, and then bin off your contract.
yeah, and also like what you're saying is just get employed, which like, yeah, get employed. like you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, like if you want to get a job at one of these companies, yeah, then do that. Like that's not hard to do, and that's a great way to get money. But or like not sorry, it's like difficult to do, but I'm saying like as far as it's not hard to make money that way. Yeah, like that's the best way to do it. But like just going around shopping a product, I think is pretty doomed for sure.
Yeah, agreed. Cool. I think that's. I don't want to spend the whole time discussing the usual inability of people to sell these sort of tools to the esports market. So we'll close this for now, and we'll move on to one of the other topics I want to go through, which is kind of a follow-on, which is to do with AI itself and like can you build it for esports? Is it useful? What sort of things are useful? And if we look into the traditional sports, we see some examples, but usually they're not AI specifically. They're more to do with statistics in general, right? Like the Moneyball example that everyone's heard of is simply the ability to calculate the expected runs better than everyone else can calculate the expected runs, and then use that to buy the best players who have the best expected runs, right? Like this isn't AI. This is pretty simple. And then we go on to more like the chess version, which is pure AI as far as it goes, which is the ability to train a model to beat a human, right? So you have a computer that can do something like play chess, but do it better than most humans. And that's something they've been able to successfully do in both Dota and chess, in Go. But let's talk about in League of Legends, specifically in esports, not so bothered about solo queue at the moment. Is there a place for AI? Is there a tools that can be built using this kind of latest in technology? And where is it? Is it in finding new players? Is it in drafting? Is it in macro? Is it in item and rune optimization? Has anyone got any opinions on AI as a kind of advanced field in esports? Alejandro, I'll go with you first.
Yeah, definitely. I think like you have many solutions that you can fix using AI, right? For example, for me, the first one that comes through my mind is finding potential players is fine, but I still we'll talk about this later, right? But for me, one of the most classic ones, and I think everyone should have it already, which is finding Smurfs accounts through the solo queue rankings, right? I think that's the most basic and classic example that we can talk about. Another one could be this something that I was testing during this during the Iberian Cup and at the end of the split with the previous scrims that we had. It's like, for example, automatically report or feedback report after the scrim. And especially with the jungler, like for example, just take the pathing that my jungler did. You take the outputs and then you try to simulate the same situation if you can find a different pathing that will be better or not. This is something that, for example, for our coaches will take multiple minutes to look at it and review with the players, etc. But I think using AI in a matters of 1 second, you can already have a feedback from your jungler regarding the first clear. And it's not like only that, like you have multiple different solutions that you could have, like multiple, like many. But the other thing is like, are we ready to use it? Because this is something that Peora said at the same time, right before, that we are in a sector that is super new. It's extremely new. The people that we are here, we have like how much 5-7 years experience as developers. Like we are still in a kind of new market where I believe we still just don't know all of the possibilities that we could collect from League of Legends. So yeah, like that's my point of view of it.
Yeah, 100%. There's the issue is maybe not can you do it, but are we at the point where we should be doing it? Because like we said with the productionizing it, where you actually are creating tools that people can use, there is a barrier to entry, which is, can you convince a coach that they need to listen to the output of an AI model? And wherever that's making macro decisions, item decisions, champion decisions, or player decisions,
I think yes. I think so. I think that's easy. I think almost, if not all of us, almost all of us are doing that already. But instead of the AI telling the coach what to do, it's just like, okay, you go check your AI and then talk to the coach. But it's not like if the coach are ready or not, because they will not understand anyway, right? Like at the end, it's very weird the case that your coach has some data science skills, like very, very uncommon. So I think that it's not a matter if they are ready to use it, it's more a matter if we are ready to use it, right?
Yeah, and a lot of that comes down to the difficulty to explain AI models. So if you use what is considered the kind of the stereotypical AI, which is called a neural network, they are incredibly difficult to decipher how they're coming to their results. So you could create a model that says which is the best champion to pick at this point in the draft, or which player is the best person to pick up for next season, and it will give you a result, but there's no way of you knowing how it's come to that answer, because it's such a black box that it's going through. You pass it data, it learns, and then it outputs results, and it's incredibly difficult to kind of find out what's going on in the middle. So you can get to these positions, and this is a mistake I made for sure, was going to coaches and saying, like, you lost this draft, but I can't tell you why you lost this draft. I have this model that's able to predict draft results with a good degree of accuracy, and I know that from that model it says this is a bad draft, but I don't know exactly what was causing it. I just know it's bad. And that's a very difficult conversation to have, and then it requires you to then do extra parts to the modeling, which is to try and actually work out what it's trying to tell you.
I think here the main point is like you go to the coach telling them that they have lost the draft. I think the best solution for AI and in general for everything, it's not telling that something is good or correct. We should be talking about options. Like you can, for example, go to the coach and say, okay, you have done this draft, but I believe. You don't say that the AI believes. No, it doesn't matter for the coach, even though if you say like my hamsters believe that the other draft was better, for them it's the same. They don't really know where that is coming from. So I think that the matter, like for example, it's the same if you talk with a player. You cannot tell them, yeah, you did that wrong. You need to try to make them understand why is there a better option. If that makes sense.
Yeah, well, what I'm trying to say is that even interpretability issue in AI is advancing. Like people now are trying to explain, like new papers are trying to explain neural networks with decision trees, which are really interpretable and can give us why the neural network did this or did that. So it's a big issue in AI right now. But I think interpretability in general is like super hard if you don't give suggestions, like he said. Like I think AI projects in general, you mentioned Dota or reinforcement learning for games in general. I think that it is two big categories. Like you cannot, you can say reinforcement learning and having big budgets like DeepMind to create a bot. I don't know. I had an idea to create a bot who can play against my players when I'm individually coaching them. That can space perfectly, that can space to Gumayuzi level, that can space to I don't know which level. But the thing is, these projects are like their scope is so big and they're really resourceful. You know, it's a DeepMind kind of project. It's Microsoft. I don't know if even Microsoft can do that. But the other parts of the projects, like suggestions, getting insights. I don't know. In football, they have a lot of statistics, as you said, but what I'm trying to say is that interpretability in AI is a problem right now, and we are advancing in research in that specific thing. But what people can feel is the most important thing. Like they just need the result. They don't need to understand what's behind right now, you know?
Well, this is where I
disagree.
pretty hard disagree.
Yeah, highly disagree.
Go ahead, Bjorn.
I mean, you say people don't care about what's behind, but the whole reason they don't trust you is because they don't trust what is behind the code. I mean, even in the example of like the example you brought up there, Jack, like if you told me, hey, my model told me that this draft is wrong, my first question is not just into a black box. It's like, well, let me see your model first. Like, I don't know how you're even calculating this. Like that's for me with someone with a data background. Coaches are going to like, and I would like if you told me that, I would be super distrusting, and I know how it probably works. You know what I'm saying? Like, and now imagine a coach who has no idea. Like, they do care what is behind the process, and you can't just say like, oh, just tell them to suck it up and accept the results. Like, that's not how trust works. That's not, you know.
I'd say instead of this champion, you can get this champion to get up to this score, for example, and that will make sense for the coach. I think.
But not
I
if
don't
you
know.
can't
Me as a
explain
coach,
it, right?
if someone comes to me and says this champion is good in this case, if we replace this champion by this champion, your score now is I don't know what. He will be happy with the result. He doesn't need to understand why the neural network thought this is the better result. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think that I mean, I just disagree. Having worked with coaches, I mean, you're a coach too, but like, I don't know. I don't think I've ever met a single coach who would accept that. Like, they would rather just use their own brain at that point.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
but they would be out of suggestions sometimes, and AI can bring some suggestions. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can bring suggestions to the
It's an
table.
assistant. It's not. It's an assistant. Think of it like medical AI right now. It's not solution. It's an assistant.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that, but I think that the problem I have with the way you presented the argument is like talking about the score. Like, they're not going to care about the score. Like, if you want to bring suggestions and say like, hey, this champion would be good here for XYZ reason, like the actual reasons, sure. If you talk, as soon as you talk score, they don't care. Like, that's my point. Like, the score.
It's a fair point.
Yeah. I don't think the score matters as much. Like I think it's good to, like you said, it uses a tool to bring options to the table. And just be wary that if you keep bringing shit options to the table, then they're just going to stop talking to you. But that's not really like something that we can like. That's not important. But like the score part of it, I wouldn't worry about as much, because if they don't know how the score is being factored, then it probably does not matter to them anyway. Just talk to them about like, the actual reasons why those champions would be good, and that's where league knowledge kind of comes into play. Like, you kind of need that knowledge of the game to understand why the model is telling you, XYZ would probably be good there, because then you could see it and be like, oh, you're right, actually, that those champs will be good. Let me go tell the coach, because why. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, I see. I just think that, for example, if we take just a very easy example, if we say like we have two range champions, we have a team comp who has this average range, and in like we're giving our neural network the champions range and what to take into consideration. Just a very easy example. In the end, the neural network will tell you like this is good, or this was the best pick, or this could be another pick, or these are the top 5 picks. But what I'm trying to say is that the coach will have these results, and I can explain what are the factors behind it, like what I put in input, but the part that is not really can't be interpreted right now by AI is the neural network part, and people are researching right now to advance in that part. They're explaining neural networks with decision trees. They're trying to do some work around that, but I can only tell the coach what I put as an input, what factors I took into consideration, and then it's up to the neural network to decide which factor is the most important one. But it stays, as I said, an assistant more than a decision maker,
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement here. Ultimately, so for instance, let's take that example, but with your range finder, you've got the data you're feeding in is the ranges, like let's say the auto attack ranges of all your champions, and then you're feeding that into a neural network, and you're asking it, will this impact my probability of winning the game? In fact, let's use a simpler example, which is the AP versus AD split, right? Everyone listening should know that you want a good mix of attack damage and ability power damage. Otherwise, it's too easy for the enemy team to just build around whatever damage source you have. So you could train a single model that uses that single data source, which is how much AP damage do I have as a percentage of AD damage or as total damage? And will that affect my win rate? And that's super easy to say to a coach. You can be like, this is a bad draft because we have 90% AD damage, right? Like that's a pretty easy thing to make. The problem is that these models often don't have that single data source. It's 1,000 different data inputs going in, and it's coming up with a result, and it's not particularly clear to anyone why one number is higher than the lower, or why one thing is beneficial to another, because they're not this kind of linear relationship where it's number goes up better for everyone. It's usually some very strange situation where there's a balance between this number and that number and all the other different features going in. So that when you kind of expand out that example, it becomes incredibly difficult to get to. But I think we're all in agreement that AI is heading in the right direction. It's going to be able to do cool things, especially when explainability gets better, which means we can kind of justify the reasons we're coming up with. But I think we all would agree that the most important thing is the game knowledge to be able to explain why you're making a recommendation, wherever that came from AI or from just your scouting of watching the enemy VODs or whatever it might be. Alejandro, we haven't heard from you in a while. Do you have any closing thoughts before we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, like, to finish this topic. Even though AI is a really good solution in order to fix most of our problems, we also need to understand that many coaches in LEC, they're still using, how can I say that? Let's say that we should be careful with the speed that we develop our tools, because at the same time, this is something that Veora said. Like, if we develop different tools in a very fast way, it can create conflict with the coaches and players, and they could start thinking that they don't really trust on it, right? And I feel this is what really matters inside a team, if you are able to trust on the tools or not. So I think we are still a bit far away to do some AI as a real project and being very efficient and giving them to the players and coaches so they can fully trust on it. But definitely, as you said, Jack, we are in the correct way.
Awesome, good stuff. Remember, if you are listening and you have an opinion you want to give, you can press the request to speak button and I will gladly accept you into the panel so you can give your 2 cents on whatever subject we're discussing. So far, we have done data sources. We have done, is it possible to productionize tools, statistics to be able to sell to teams in the current ecosystem? And now we've just closing out the topic on AI. The next topic I want to discuss is a ranking. So I want to get a ranking from our speakers at the moment and anyone else in the chat who wants to discuss this, which is
Jack, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I actually have to go. I have a meeting soon.
That's such a shame, Biora, but I understand, no problem.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll see you
Take
guys.
care.
Later.
See you.
Thanks for joining. See you, dude.
Thank you.
We're now 1 speaker down, so if anyone else wants to chime in on this one, then please do. So back to the question is, as far as data and analytics go and AI, of these 4 topics, which one is the biggest win? Which one can we in esports get the most out of currently today? And those 4 topics are player scouting, so finding new talent in the next season, drafting, so picking your champions before the game, macro, so deciding between Dragon and Herald, and items and runes, so picking and buying the right items during the game. So Alejandro, we'll start with you. Put those 4 in order and justify yourself.
For me, the first one is items and runes. Second one will be draft, but probably a different approach. Like, I wouldn't say, I would say like draft, but as in like feedback. Like you can take a look at your feedback after the scrim or like after you have played or done a draft or something like that. Like just getting an instantly feedback from it. The last one will be player scouting, and the third one is the third one. The reason
Macro.
why macro game, yeah. The reason why I think macro gaming could be beneficial, it's because many times you probably know that during the review with the players, etc., many of them are discussing how a play could be done in a different way, right? So if they don't really agree, you can always have a tool that try to hint them what is the best possible solution. And the last one is the player scouting, because I believe that there has to be a hierarchy, right? What I mean with a hierarchy is like, I don't really see a place where an LEC, at this stage right now, an LEC team gets a player from a 4th division league in Germany, for example, right? So I think it should have a hierarchy, and right now it's not as important, because if you're a good player, there are not really that many good players. So if you are good, you're gonna start promoting between divisions very fast, and on solo queue too. So it's very easy to detect those players, even if you are not using an AI. So that's why I put that one in the last position.
God, we have the opposite. I think ours is in literal reverse order of my priority, but I'll come back to me in a second. So before I move on to Buck, if anyone else has an opinion on those 4 categories, then please do just press the request to speak button and we will bring you in. In fact, we have got one. So we're bringing in Evelyn. I always want to call you Evelyn, who is a PhD studying in esports. So I'm bringing you in, Eve, if you want to chat. You're on mute. Feel free to come off. If not, I'll keep going.
Hey, so I guess I just wanted to ask, like, what do you mean by a good player in this sense? Can you, like, list 3 or 4 or 5 characteristics of what makes a good player, and how would they be able to climb up the ranks with these characteristics?
I think the best example, thank you for the question. I think the best example of this is Jake, for example, in LDLC before, right? Like, he's a player who has a really good map awareness. He's a player who has a really good micro game knowledge, and macro game too. The decision making that they have in different situations and plays, and also the communication. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is, when you want to get a new player from LEC, you usually have a look on the VODs in order to check the communication and how they interact with different situations, right? So what I'm trying to say is, like, the amount of players that you have to check, there are not that many, like maximum 10 in one season, right? That's why I think it's not that important to have an AI at the top level right now, because the pool of the player is not as big. So I would say map awareness, micro game, and decision. Like, when I say decision making, it could be interpreted as a micro game too, but it's not the same at the same time. I don't really know how to explain that. It's just, like, not the same. Micro game and decision making are 2 completely different things.
I think I am, like, building a roster lately, so I scouted a lot of Korean players, and I can tell you, like, if we want to talk about only League of Legends, there are a lot of factors, but if you want to talk about AI, I think to quantify these factors is really hard. Like, quantifying the factors would be like saying, just an example, saying this guy was first to the play, he read the play first. This jungler read the play first. This guy, when he got hit by a skill shot, his dodge angle was 90 degrees of this skill shot. Or just trying to quantify these kind of things is one of the most important challenges in implementing AI in player scouting, in my opinion. Because if you're scouting with statistics or purely statistics, you're just going through his CS per minute, maybe having a score for the league he plays in, for the players he played against, etc. But the kind of details a coach will look at are hard to quantify right now. That's why, in my opinion, player scouting has potential, but needs to be really developed with coaches as well. Like, a data scientist develops this with a coach, so they can try to quantify the real factor that will come in when you will decide about a player. But I think a lot of really important factor could be taken into consideration depending on the role, of course.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with what you both said. But Evelyn, regarding your question, is like, for AI, if we talk about pure statistics, it's impossible to predict if a player is good or not, because, for example, the best example for this, in my opinion, is Shiro, the mid laner of Team Heretics. Before he joined Team Heretics, his behavior was not the best. So how do you, like, even though in solo queue he was performing, like, incredible, Like he was a beast in solo queue. How do you actually, using AI, how can you predict the behavior of a player? Right? I think this is something that is not possible to do at this point, at this stage.
Can you guys hear me?
Go ahead.
Yeah. You were talking about Yike, I think previously, right?
Uh-huh.
He was scouted by AI.
Which player are you talking about?
Yike.
Yike.
Yeah, yes, he was, but that's
He
what I said
was?
at the beginning. No, he was from the lower team. Like what I'm trying to say is like, it's not like for example, I already have on my list very potential players. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I have on my list potential players that can promote to different teams. But even though they are good mechanically speaking, they don't have to be ready for it. There still needs to be a hierarchy between different teams. Like
No,
for example,
what I was saying is Yike, when he joined LDLC,
yeah.
was a player that was scouted by AI.
Can you explain it
Oh,
a bit
it's a
in details,
confirmation. Okay.
Mephisto? If it's not like NDA or something?
I don't want to go into too much details, but I can
Yeah.
tell you that he was scouted by AI.
Statistics or AI? Like, is it like quantifying things in the game, or is it like just his stats and
It's
these
both.
stuff?
It's both. And
Yeah.
furthermore,
But here's
I want to say one
go
thing.
ahead. Mhm.
This player had no offers outside of LDLC. So, like, are we so good at recognizing talent without using AI that the player who joins G2 about 11 months later has no offers on the previous offseason?
Here's the thing. Here I disagree because okay, there's one player using AI who has successfully promoted between the teams.
No,
And
there's many
potential.
more, but
Which more? Because for example, the one who just moved to LCS, the one who was on Excel Academy,
yeah,
that guy. Okay, you can tell me he was scouted by AI. He was, but his behavior was horrible, and that's why he got benched from many teams, right?
no, he
And now
didn't
he's
get
on the.
benched by many teams. That's not true.
Actually, he got benched by one team.
Yes, okay, that's more precise. Yes.
Thank you. But okay, you can say one example who did very well with AI, and I gave you another one who did very wrong with AI. Okay, he was super good. He was winning the games, almost solo winning the games, but still it was impossible to live with him. So it's like, okay, Jake was good. I give you another one that is not good, which means that our accuracy, in order to use AI for those things, are not
So
perfect.
you're completely dismissing MNS because he got benched from one team?
For the feedback that I got from him, yes, of course, it's the feedback that I got from him.
I think as a coach, I think it's so different. Like a player can get benched in one team, cannot connect with some players, but can connect with others. And the role of AI here is not to say you should have a good personality or you should fit really well with the team. We're doing AI on the player himself. Like saying MNS is bad is, I think, not true because in game he's good, you know.
No one said that MNS is bad.
And AI can suggest you. AI can suggest this player. It's an assistant. It's like in medical uses. In the end, it's up to you to decide. It's up to you to see the fit IRL or stuff like that. But I still think that
no one said this. No one said that MNS was bad, because one of the things that I just said is MNS was solo winning many games at the same time. So it's like no one said that guy is bad.
Yeah, so we can't blame it on AI. Like AI said this guy is good, and AI I think succeeded in this. I'm not saying AI will always succeed in detecting players because like we all know any AI model can have errors and stuff, but in the end, I think that we all agree that AI will only suggest the player that can work in your team.
Yes,
in the end, it's up to you, you know.
And others will say, "Oh, but my granny thinks this guy is going to be toxic in that environment," and you can believe his granny or not. But statistically, and you can tell if players are talented or not. That's a fact.
Yeah, it is. It is. I agree with you here. But for example, if I have an AI that tells you that one player is extremely good, will you get him for an LEC team right away?
Yes.
Right away for the main team.
Yes.
without previous experience.
What do you mean without previous experience?
Yeah, without
It-
previous experience. From
I mean,
solo queue
AI
to
will
LEC.
not. No,
Like,
AI will not work
somebody
only on
from-
solo queue. It will work on competitive as well because it's different environments. Like you cannot train the AI on or try to predict his performance depending on.
Yeah, but what about
Solo
if you don't
queue
have competitive data?
You cannot get him to LEC.
Exactly.
Maybe
that's
if
what
it's
I'm
maybe if it's like an aberration in the system. Maybe if it's like in the top 0.1% of the play. I don't know, top
You can,
0.1%
you
of
can.
challengers. You can, yes, but if he's
In
like
2020, my algorithms told me that this guy called Crabfish Spoon in Korean solo queue was actually just an anomaly, right? Crabfish Spoon was called, I mean, now he's known as Gumayushi. End of 2020, he never played competitive. End of 2022, he was in the World Finals and probably the better AD carry.
Exactly, but he follows a hierarchy. That was the first thing that I was saying. Like if you find a guy with potential, maybe you can get him for the academy 6 months. Maybe if he's good enough, you promote him from the next split. But straight to the main team, I think no one will do that without knowing the behavior of the player.
it depends on the
how
risk
he can
you want to
interact.
take. To be honest, it really depends on the risk you want to take. It's just like the decision of promoting the guy directly to LEC could be just like if Mephisto is spotted Gumayusi in Korean solo queue, I can say that Elam or I don't know which other Korean player that I scouted this year could go to an LEC team directly, but if they don't want to take the risk, it's up to them to say we will wait 6 months without this player and take the risk of having a worse player in our team. It's just a trade-off in the end. Like it's up to you to decide. As we said, AI will just tell you this guy is an anomaly. It's just abnormal to have these stats in solo queue at this level.
Exactly,
That's
but
it.
you only evaluate one part of the game. You have many sides in this game.
Yes, there's many sides, and the side where you can be the most precise is that one. The other, again, you can ask your granny what she thinks, how this guy will perform. Is he gonna react to stress? Is he gonna fit in a team environment? You don't know. You don't know, and you can't know by asking questions for 2 hours. Do you agree with that? That it's like impossible
Exactly.
to truly know somebody's character by talking to him before living the things with him, right? So then you're just trying to go to the area, which is only one of many, right? Where you can be the most precise.
Yes.
Don't ignore the others, but there is one which, yes, you can put numbers on it.
Exactly.
The others
but
is just personal appreciation with a lot of human bias.
Mhm.
Can I just
But-
interrupt? Can I just interrupt and say I think that the benefit of AI here is that you can get historical data of a player that you would never have considered before, and I think probably to Mephisto's point, it's like you can find players who people wouldn't normally consider because no one has heard of them or they don't have a track record yet, but they are showing the same trajectory as maybe legacy players, and you wouldn't
Sure,
have
yes.
considered them. And I think that's kind of like the
Or
benefit of
they
AI
are
at this stage.
underrated,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Like some people are just underrated by the memes, you know? Say Armut, right?
yeah, by the
Armut in
community.
2021, you can watch the games in the finals. He was laning against Odoamne, Wukong into Karma, which is like impossible matchup, and solo killing the guy. We all joke about Armut, Gnarmut, and all that things, right? But yeah, he was a phenomenal player at that time.
I just disagree on the last part, Mephisto, of your last
Mhm.
the last thing you said. AI now can try to quantify the human factors and the human to human interaction. I worked IRL apart from League with a consulting firm. We worked for Airbus, and one of the bigger projects was trying to have a score for the guy's integration with the team, if I might say. It means like we're analyzing his emails, the tone of his speech, his communications in meetings and stuff like that, and trying to have an idea of, is it too offensive? Is it supportive? Is it, we can start and I think it's a long road in esports because we don't have a lot of data and we don't have a lot of people working on it. But I think it's like really, really something we can quantify. But this comes, like I said, like in the beginning, with the expertise in the beginning. Data science requires expertise to quantify these factors, you know.
Can I just do a cheeky plug and say that I'm trying to build that right now? I'm a team dynamics expert. I just did my PhD on exactly this, like interaction analysis of communication between players. And so I think that future is like really possible, especially with what's going on now in the speech recognition and natural language processing space. Just like a FYI.
Yeah, recommend checking out Eve's your paper. I don't know if you probably can't publicize it anyway here, but if anyone is interested,
it's been published, so you can check it out. It's public.
Awesome. Check out her profile. I'm sure it'll be somewhere linked in there. It is well worth taking a look into that research area. I think just bringing us back to the main point here, one of the key issues is that none of this has been publicized and none of this has been tracked and none of this has been proven. So it's incredibly difficult for us to talk about what ifs where we don't even have a baseline to say, can people... I know that it's going on behind the scenes, but publicly, there's no one who is able to verify this stuff, right?
It's a dark forest situation where nobody wants to show their cards first. Everybody's hiding their cards. I am hiding my cards. And I know some other teams are as well, right? Because there is no benefit to us showing what we can do already so that others can catch up or become aware that they are really behind. So that's the situation right now.
Yes, which means that a lot of things don't get peer reviewed. So there are people that I have met who are under the impression that, not you, Mephisto, others who are under the impression that they have more and better accuracy in data than they actually do. And the reason that they're under that disillusion is because they haven't actually allowed the community to verify it. They haven't publicized it, right? So it's very easy for them to kind of fake their own data and say, I have a very accurate AI model that can do drafting or can do scouting or whatever. But all they show you is their winners. And you're like, okay, cool, but let's see your losers. Let's see your full results. Where's the peer review here? And because, like you say, it's a commercially sensitive topic, no one's actually going to share their best practices or their code base or anything like that. So for most people, it is basically a shot in the dark until you get into a team and start realizing, okay, these people are way ahead or way behind or under disillusionment about how good their models are or whatever it might be. Or in my case, you might find that the team has absolutely nothing at all.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, it's just not allowed by teams to just chat too much and show personal cards. So
yeah, which is completely understandable, right? Because it's their edge. They feel that they have an advantage over the opponents in whatever part of the game it is, whether it's draft or scouting or whatever, because of these data models that they have.
I mean, you can take another example in F1. Racing lines was something simulated by McKinsey, and teams started just to copy each other's racing lines at some point, and that's it. Like, the commercial value was not that strong in the end for the amount of money, time, resources you're gonna invest in the thing. So.
Right. Okay. So why do the AI to work out the best racing line if you can just copy the person who's doing it? Right? Is that the argument?
That's a fair point. Yeah.
Why would you invest in reinforcement learning with, I don't know, 3 GPUs or even more, and having infinite loops of RL simulating your racing lines, or playing games of Dota if you're I don't know, if you're DeepMind, if you can just copy the racing line? That just
That's a very good point. I like that. Yeah, it makes sense. Why use AI to identify the best talent? Just wait for someone else to bid on him and then overbid. Just copy the best.
That's why it should be really confidential in the end, and like that's why I asked Mephisto if there is any NDA in the thing or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great point. I will just do a plug. We've had a couple more people join. So if you are interested in adding to this topic, we are open to new speakers. So just press the request to speak button. You do have to be on a mobile device, I'm afraid, so Android or iPhone. But once you're on it, just press request to speak and we can bring you up here to add your 2 cents to whatever topic we're discussing. And we have been through quite a few in the last hour or so. Mephisto, whilst we've got you, just before you joined, we were trying to get everyone speaking, to prioritize these 4 topics: player scouting, drafting, macro, and items and runes. Where would you list those 4?
I would say player scouting, 80% of your season. Draft, 15 more percent. And then 4% for macro, sure. And 1% for items. There you go.
Controversial. Alejandro, that is almost the opposite of yours.
Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry. There's nothing wrong with the opposite.
For me, if like you have a big budget, I think the most important one right now is having RL bot that can make your laners improve. As I said in the beginning, if you can have a bot that can adapt to Gomezi spacing or better than Gomezi spacing, or I don't know to which limit, but this project, as I said, is kind of big. It's been done in Dota, and this should be,
it's been
in
done
my
in Dota
opinion,
by like Google, no?
yeah, DeepMind, a Google company. Yeah, sure.
Right now, I don't yet have as much resources as them.
That's exactly what I said. This, in my opinion, this should be like one of the biggest projects in League of Legends. And then I do agree that player scouting should be like the most important part, because other parts are a bit less not important, but a bit less, a bit more complicated to explore, in my opinion.
Actually, like Alejandro, you're the one who you were saying like reverse, right? That like coaching macro, for example, is really important, right?
No, for me, items is important.
Items
is the
okay,
first
okay.
one. Yeah, for me. Because as I said before, I think many players, they have problems adapting to the metagame, and you will agree with me that in many cases we wait for Korea or China to create the new build in order to kind of destroy the meta and start having the champion that is permaban, etc., etc., etc. I think the best example that comes to my mind is the Akali with the Turbo 10 tank.
Yeah.
It was OP for like two patches, and no one knew it. So if you are able to get the advantage on that side, you will be able to be the first in order to get that information, especially with the format that we are moving on in the LEC. So that's why for me it's important to have like the most optimal, like not optimal, because at the same time I also take in consideration the players' feelings, but it's like if there is something giga broken that no one knows, I would like to use that first in the competitive match, if that makes sense. So that's why for me,
that totally makes sense. That totally makes sense. Like back in season 6, I think, I invented the Kokmo build with like the Witsend, and I made my players play it. I think it was season 6. Yeah, I think it was season 6. So, and I made my players play it, right? And they told me it was shit. So we stopped playing it. About like a couple of weeks later, right, when the patch hit Korea, it was really broken. It's just hard sometimes to, even when it's like completely mathematically, like it cannot not be broken.
This is exactly. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
And this is why, like this season, now that he's been announced, right, we will have the pleasure of seeing Reckless not build Lord Dominic's on AD carries and still win a lot of games, right? Or we have seen, I think in season 10, we've seen this guy Bean, right? Very hyped, right? And he's out there playing Black Cleaver Jacks in World Semis or Finals, actually. And it's like, do items really matter, actually? Sometimes I just think to
Yeah.
myself, like, do they matter
Yeah.
when this guy can just be in World Semis and like build Black Cleaver on Jax, or that guy can win LEC 20 times and just never build Last Whisper? It's like, does it matter?
Okay, I have 2 points that I'll just join your last point, Mephisto,
Hmm.
and my second point. But my first point is we are talking about the problem of the interpretability of AI once again, because we know something is good, we don't know why is it good. We need the coaches to not waste, to put enough time into interpreting our results to understand why this thing is strong. Sometimes because League is not like really straightforward. When we say this item could be strong, it might be because it's more damage, but you need to know how to apply that damage. You need to know how to go in, go out of fights to have the most impact out of the item. There are
Oh,
some
for sure,
other
for sure.
factors as
I
well.
think that's like very valid what you're saying about the way you should be playing the team fights or the skirmishes
Yeah,
when we talk about the Moonstone or Moonstaff item base,
exactly.
right?
That's what I'm trying
I
to
think
refer to.
that's very relevant.
So
And yeah, that's very relevant.
that's my first point. My second point, just to comment on your point, I think that one of the most important questions I ask to myself, what is the delta of the item builds in the end compared to other deltas? Like some deltas in the game, some variances are like the player skill, the player that is playing, the team synergy, the champs they're playing, and the delta of items. I really want to quantify it. I really want to see if we had a perfect world of RLs, of reinforcement learning, that can simulate the games. I really want to see what is the delta of the item,
I think
because it could be really nothing in the end,
I think
Yeah.
it depends. I think it depends. Because first of all, there is nothing perfect. Because as Mephisto, you said, like maybe you found the perfect build with Kokmal, but your players didn't really know how to use it until
No,
there's
no, no, no,
someone in
no.
Korea.
It's not that they didn't know how to use it. It's just that we actually
They
ended up
thought it
losing
was
that
not
game,
correct, right?
and they are humans, so they are very biased.
Exactly. Like we need to
Bias.
take in consideration the human side of it. That's exactly my point, Mephisto. Thank
You,
you.
you guys have to understand that some drafts for LEC are decided by the fact that that player or this player just watched a Chinese TikTok of Lucian Nami this morning, and then all of a sudden, Lucian Nami is the most broken thing, and we have to play it.
Yeah, the comfort zone.
No, not comfort.
It's
It is.
No, no,
It
mental.
is
not
comforting,
comfort.
man.
It's
I
just
worked.
that they see something and then, well, now it's OP, right? They see Deft doing a perfect culling,
Oh, okay. I understood
and there you
something.
go. Well,
I understood something different. I understood
I guess
something.
the
I thought
whole
that you
practice
meant
of the week
competitive game.
is removed,
Yeah.
right? I know this happens in many teams.
Yes, and this before I coached in MENA, I was in LCK Challenges Korea, and sometimes players they know each other, and they have
Hmm.
ego and they have bias, and they don't accept to build. I don't know, like I'll just say something from this preseason. They will not accept to build Tiamat in lane or a weaker item than their power spike and not fight and just accept that they cannot do this or that. Like this bias is important as well. So players have egos and have opinions, and it impacts a lot the builds and why the build can work and cannot work sometimes. He can just feel that he's not strong right now, so he will just say, no, this doesn't work for me. And it happened multiple times, even with Koreans. And people are sometimes really disciplined, but it happens.
Yeah, I'm gonna say something here, but this thing could happen literally with everything, right? Because for example, like if you watch the interview that I did with Jag, I said literally that even though you have the most efficient build, maybe your player for some reason is not able to play that, or she's not able. No, able is not the correct word, but it's like he doesn't feel like playing with it, right? Because as you said, that the ego of the players, many things. But this could happen with anything. Like if you move to a different topic, for example, let's go back to the player scouting. Maybe your AI tells you that this player is the best player that you can find right now, and you put him in the main team, and at the end, because of anything, it goes wrong. So it's the same thing with everything. It just depends what you want to decide in the end. Like, because as you said, what AI gives you the suggestion, and then it's your decision. So it's the same for builds, it's the same for players scoutings, it's the same for drafts, it's the same for everything. Everything depends on what you want to do with it, and the players that you have in your team too.
I'm really sorry, guys. I have a meeting soon as well in 3 minutes. So have a good night, and thank you for this.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
coming.
Jack. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for joining, Buck. I don't know why so many people working on Saturdays. You know, you guys need to relax. There's esports people for
It's
you.
off season for us. It's really off season for Mena, and we are
No,
trying to do a lot
it's
of
been a
things.
pleasure. Thanks for joining. And if anyone else does want to get involved and give their 2 cents, then there is a request to speak button, which you will be able to find somewhere if you are on your phone. If you're on your desktop, for some reason, Elon Musk hasn't added that feature in yet. But I think there was
I'll tell him.
Yeah, cheers, Mephisto. Appreciate that. I think that was a great conversation about that topic. I will just close out with my one, which is probably I think the same as Louise, which is player scouting. I would put probably around about 70%, draft somewhere around about the sort of 20%, and then maybe 5 each for macro and items and runes. But it's not for the same reasons, I don't think. So I actually think macro could be massively improved by data analytics and AI. I just think it's too difficult. There's too much going on. You need to kind of study the game in a way that's very difficult to do compared to, let's say, drafting, where you have a static situation, right? Like draft is the same pretty much every game. Whilst a macro decision, there's too much going on. There's items, there's gold, there's positioning. There's just too many factors. So even if it was the number one most effective way of winning more games is making better macro decisions, simply because it's so difficult to get AI to learn what that means, as in what is a better macro decision. For me, it's very low on the priority list of things that I would be building if I was running an AI team in an esports org. And player scouting would be the first. I just feel that it's all you can pick LDR over Gale over Collector, or the other way around. But if you're getting stomped and you're 3-0, like that is not making the difference to that game. You know that it's the sort of 200 gold efficiency differences where a kill or CSing or bullying someone off a lane or tower diving or whatever is going to be far in excess of the 200 gold efficiency that you would get for picking the right item. So I just don't think they're in the same. They're even in the same. What one's kind of like an S plus change that you can make through AI, and one is like a D tier, very low on the list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually like. It's been like what 12 years, right? And we only have 2 terms to speak about the levels of gameplay in League of Legends. We have micro and macro. That's not enough. I think we need to introduce a new one, which is the middle one, right? It's the in between macro and micro, because I get so tired of people talking about micro and macro and nothing in between. So there you go, a new term for us.
Yeah, we need to create our own version of expected goals. I know we spoke about this before, but I don't know what that looks like yet. I just feel that there must. I know that Tim from Oracle Elixirs and now C9, right?
No, 100 Thieves.
100 Thieves, sorry. Has done some work on the probability side of things. So, you know, like 15 minutes into the game, what is the chance of you winning this game, which is kind of expected goals in a way, as in like expected win probability. But even his system, which is pretty good, is very basic compared to what could be done, because you are looking just at like how many drakes have been taken, what drakes are there, like how much golds does everyone have. And it doesn't factor in all the other millions of factors that go into winning a game of League of Legends. So it's incredibly difficult.
I actually remember in 2020 summer, I asked my analyst to run some numbers, and we found out that your probability to win the game at like, if you had first Herald and like 500 gold lead in competitive, if you had both these things at like 9 minutes, your win chance was like 98%.
No way.
No, it was true. It was like done factoring all of the games of summer and spring at that time from all the regions. And yeah, if you had a slight gold lead, maybe 500 gold is a big gold lead, right? But still, I would say on broadcast, like that's not talking like when somebody has 500 gold lead and Herald, like people are not like freaking out, like the game's over, right? But I think it was 98%. Like I could like look again back to the percentages, but it was something absolutely disgusting like this, and I became like a bit dispassionate about the game at that point because, well, you know, when you know these numbers, you're like, are we really going to make a comeback? Well, maybe we're going to make a fake comeback, right? Where the hype comes back, but we are actually just going to end up losing the game anyway. So, yeah, it's not so difficult when you look at some specific stats to understand who's winning the game or not, right?
Yeah, for sure. And there are ways to make this even more efficient. So, for instance, my favorite statistic, if you've listened to any of the podcasts, is the snowball volatility, which is also known as eco. I think it's more referred to as eco in casting world, which is basically how well does your champion react to gold. So if they're ahead, is it very good or is it very, very good, or does it kind of not mean anything? The best example being something like a tank like Cho'Gath or Sion or Ornn or whatever. A gold lead's great on them, but you'd rather have that gold lead on someone who's more likely to be able to hard carry the game. But then on the other side, if that tank was to fall behind, it doesn't matter as much as if, let's say, your Jace fell behind, because then he's kind of a useless champion, right? Like the utility you can bring based on gold. And I think that's something that isn't factored into any model that I've seen to predict win probability, but should be, because it's so obvious, right? Like they treat Jace falling behind to an Ornn the same as they would treat Ornn falling behind to a Jace. But I think everyone on this call who's ever watched a game of League of Legends knows those are very two different games, will play out very differently.
Yeah, but this is just a case of people not comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges, right?
Right.
They just say fruits, and that feels a bit wrong to me, right?
Correct. Cool. So this is now an hour and a half into this Twitter space. So we are going to close it out here just to make the recording of it slightly bearable for anyone who wants to crack through the whole thing. Really appreciate everyone joining, all the speakers who came in to offer their 2 cents. We will try and host these more regularly, probably once a month in the new year. We do it all through the Itero Gaming Discord, which you can find on my profile. And the videos will also be posted on the Itero Gaming YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and all the rest. Little plug myself there. But once again, thanks everyone for joining. This is our first Twitter space and certainly won't be our last. Special. Go ahead, Alejandro. Sorry, I was just about to give you a special shout out. So
no, I just wanna say Logan didn't say anything, so I just want Logan to talk. Logan, are you gonna do it?
He's not even as a speaker, so I don't think we'll be able to get him. But a special shout out for Logan, who has been here for the first person to dial in, last person to leave. So appreciate you, Logan. Who was the very first analyst I spoke to when I went to see XL Esports in Twickenham about 2 years ago. Yeah. Anyway, we will call it there. Thanks, Alejandro, for co-hosting this with me, Mephisto for your contribution, and Eve for getting your perspective. Really appreciate it, and all the people who are listening. It's been a really great call. This will again be republished, the full recording of it, if you missed anything, on the Itero Gaming YouTube page. So if you go onto my Twitter profile, you'll probably find a link. If not, I'll share one as soon as the video is ready. Thanks all. Yeah, go on then. Final thoughts, Louis. Let's go.
Yeah, like in a year or 2 years, this could be really fun to revisit, I believe.
Yes. Okay. Let's do this monthly or something like that, and then revisit it in a year's time. 2023, end of 2023, we'll be back here again, same time, for an end of year review of data and analytics. And with that, if there are no final comments, thank you everyone for joining. Thanks for all the speakers, and I shall catch you at the next one.